This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 31st of August 2020, and I am 2J.
And I am DM. Let's take a look at today's headlines. On the Daily Nation, Uhuru's secret choice for 2022. The Standard, what went wrong? And in the Star, why Ruto is on a warpath with Uhuru. A lot of questions on the headlines today. Let's start with the one that is a statement. What's the war about in the Star?
Why Ruto is on warpath with Uhuru. 2J.
Yeah, I think
us something DP said.
Yeah, some context. I think let's go back to last week where we can say that some of this may have begun. And the DP last week, we know, gave an interview with one of our TV stations.
Yes.
And there he said, changing the constitution is not something we can decide as a party. It is for all Kenyans to decide. It is not something I can say my legacy is to change the constitution. What? Okay.
You know what, 2J? This, and I'm going to shoot straight. This is gross insubordination by the deputy president.
Yeah.
And if he wants to go on a warpath, well and good, fair enough, all right? But please, do not do it on state courtesy. Do not do it while you're deputy president. Do not do it while you're living in a house that is funded by the state. It is just honorable that you resign.
So, so you're calling for him to resign?
Yes. Second thing, yesterday I had him say somewhere in pipeline, he said, the president shouldn't tell the public what to do. It is the public that should tell the president what to do. That's what he said. Yeah. And I want to also say this. You see, Prof says, constitution making is not a preserve of simpletons. Basically, simpletons have far more problems to deal with than to think of constitution making. And therefore, let a constitution be written by members of the public that don't have problems.
And you know what? This is why an assistant is an assistant. Which, you know, constitutionally, that is what the DP is. And I think he's doing such a fantastic job of creating noise to confuse people.
Absolutely.
I think if he actually had the intention of Kenyans at, you know, the heart of his objectives, he would be letting them hear what this constitution change is actually about. But all he's doing is he's making noise. He's having these fake rallies of sorts. I believe that's what they are. And he's just confusing people. But you know what? His time will come.
He said last week, he said it, and he said that that constitutions, what did he say? He said constitutions, he doesn't know what the referendum is about. That is what he said.
Then he's in the wrong line of work.
Now look,
I believe.
If he is a principal assistant to the president, all right, fairly, and he is one who likes to mention that, then he should follow the president's lead. But if he doesn't want to follow the president's lead, I mean, the honorable thing to do is just to resign.
I think you're right when you say that this is an open demonstration of insubordination. But the other thing I think is this. The president's call to change the constitution, and particularly the reason why he wants to change the constitution, is obviously very logical, is obviously very noble, and it's something that would be dreamed up by a statesman. But it's being rejected violently and wanting to be discarded by other leaders for this reason. It's not their idea. If whoever, and I want to make this prediction, whoever becomes president next, that's going to be one of their first agendas, because it's going to be his or her legacy. Even if right now you denounce it as something that is not a legacy, or that is something that is not worth being a legacy. I mean, what is more worth being a legacy than being able to turn around cyclic turbulence?
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, we have a three-part criteria that we use to analyze the headlines for you. We ask, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And finally, is the headline effective, thoughtful rather, or just plain lazy? What do we have in the Standard? What went wrong, 2J?
So many questions today. Let's see if the Standard answered this question. So this story, I basically like to call it a smear campaign against CS Mutahi Kagwe. And it entails his entrance into the Ministry of Health, as he was, you know, touted as this hero. We even go into into the Wall Street Journal that described him as Kenya's unlikely coronavirus hero. But then they say this, and I'm quoting this word for word.
Yeah.
They later go into how the curve of his honor has been flattened by reports of graft in key agencies under his docket. Moreover, they talk about his personality, how he has this bullish personality that he only wants things to go his way.
Yeah.
Furthermore, they say, and I'm quoting again, this would become the trademark of Kagwe. Admit, deny, blame, assure.
Yeah.
And so they're essentially talking about his possible connection to this COVID millionaire scandal or the Kemsa scandals. I don't really... I don't know what to think about this story.
My thinking is this Kemsa thing is being made to look much more than it is. Maybe it is just a scramble, it's just a little GEMA succession tiff. And this GEMA is having some sibling rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, if we constantly talk about lifting the veil of ignorance, I think that's what we should be inviting Kenyans to do right now. Yeah. They need to, peek through the nonsense of Kemsa this, Kemsa that, and see who is lying behind, these stories that were being sold.
That's precisely.
I think what is worrying to me is how it's so easy to make accusations of graft and corruption to anyone that it actually becomes paralyzing. Yes. You can't move forward, you can't do anything. But the worst thing is that we are in the midst of a crisis. Yeah. And then it's also easy to make accusations of corruption and for them to be believable because it's what do we usually call it, the coherence theory of truth. That everything aligns, that you're in a docket where there's a lot of money, that we're in a crisis and it is a time when we need to disburse a lot of money. So if you say that there's corruption happening, it obviously is believable.
Absolutely.
Anyway, in the Daily Nation, we are looking forward into 2022.
The third question of the day.
Yes, actually it's the second. Uhuru's secret choice for 2022. And the secret choice is actually Dr. Mukisa Kituyo. At least this is what the Daily Nation is telling us. And they're running this story because they say a little known team, MK is Mukisa Kituyo Mobilizer, emerged yesterday and threw Dr. Kituyo's name in the ring as a potential presidential candidate from 2022. Now, I mean, this story, even from face value or just generally, it sounds like it could be a decoy or a distraction or a smokescreen or whatever it is that you could call it. Although I must say that his candidature would be very attractive, I think.
It would be.
He's of international repute and experience. He's very intellectual for those who have followed his career. He has the stature of a statesman. He's perhaps from the right tribe and not the usual cycle that has been in the presidency. But then, of course, there's also the question of does he have the political savvy?
The nation is in the business of speculating. Next time they'll tell us that President Uhuru Kenyatta's choice candidate is Kalembe Ndile.
Yes, Kalembe Ndile. Anyway, right now we should just be talking about those who have shown interest, and I think it's only Ruto right now, and Raila is being coy.
What I realize is just as the news cycles change every day, so does the new names of who the potential mantle bearer is going to be. I think over the weekend, PK's name, Peter Kenneth, was all over the news. Today, I guess it's Kitui. Tomorrow, yes,
personally, I welcome new names. We should move away from the theory of elite circulation and see more people who can lead this country. So what do we think about the headlines themselves? I
do not like any of them.
I
think that there are 3 questions and none of them have answered.
I like the
Standard.
And I like the Nation.
Secret choice for 2022.
Yes, how how enticing you want
absolutely.
To.
But this secret, I mean, if it's a secret, then why should they tell us?
It's no longer a secret.
How do they even
if it's Mukisa Kituyo?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are not sufficiently motivated on this Monday by any of the headlines. So I suppose we're not going to award any winning headline, but at least we won't award a losing one either.
Absolutely.
And on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. And just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to analyze them for you. We ask, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And finally, is the cartoon effective or is it just plain lazy?
Yes, here in the Nation, you have Iga. And this I kind of like because it's funny. And
I think that's a first.
Yes, it's a drawing of who I would suspect to be Mutahi Kagwe, but in a PP that is designed like a mascot suit. And the reason I'm saying it is him is because of his daily briefings. And he says in the last
Not because you recognized his face.
no. So in the last 24 hours, we recorded new COVID millionaires and 0 arrests. And in the background, fellows in PPEs, mascot suits, walking away with bundles of cash.
Anyway,
but
I think
isn't it meant to be as IGA sometimes has the M-pigs?
Yeah,
right.
pigs.
So so it's meant to be the caricature of the pigs who constantly steal from the public
in costumes.
Yes, just trying to say that this entire thing is a circus, and they're clowns, they're mascots.
It's a performance. That's why people are in costumes instead of PPE.
Yeah. However, the president has had the last word, right?
Yeah.
I think he's ordered that a probe is to happen within the next 21 days. So until that happens, let's just wait and see.
Yes, and then in the Standard we have Gado, and he has drawn the president in different panels over there, in different poses, happy ones, and he's wearing African print shirts. And the title there is 2020 COVID-19 Summer Collection. I think this is meant to deride the president or be satirical and funny or poke fun, but I think he is doing a good thing by wearing Kenyan.
Build Kenya, buy Kenya. He's encouraging us to do the same.
Otherwise, I think it's a great cartoon. He's drawn very well. And then what's that creature in the star?
Oh, goodness. This is a drawing of a KQ that looks like a worm. And it's a KQ plane that looks like a worm, and it's right by the street, and it's begging. And there's a ball out there, and the caption there is, when you are already struggling and COVID happens. This is such a nonsensical cartoon.
You know what? I don't know why Ozone wants us to feel pity for KQ. For me, all I can see is if a business is acting beyond its means, you get what you deserve. They had that Muzungu CEO that they were paying, I believe, upwards of 44 million a year. That's close to 4.5 million shillings a month. When you are noticeably struggling, you get what you deserve.
This is getting so exhausting, KQ having a begging bowl. And it's also sad because they are our national carrier, and we want to see them succeeding. So
maybe we should just nationalize them, just
the
like Ethiopia.
Let me tell you, like Ethiopia, Qatar, Rwanda,
and some of the most successful airlines in the world.
Actually nationalized. So what are we doing? Making losses.
Very true.
I want to say I like the Gado's drawing today.
Oh, really?
It wasn't satirical or funny, but it was beautiful. Beautiful show.
A little fashion show from our president.
What did you guys think of the other cartoons?
I say that we toss the star. Can I please suggest that?
Oh, absolutely.
Please let me toss the star.
Yes.
Sorry, giggled at the Daily Nation.
It was funny.
It is very funny.
It's very funny.
I think we give it to Iga.
The Daily Nation gives us our winning card. So before we get into our final thought, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Debt, The First 5 Years by David Graeber.
5,000 years.
5,000 years.
What did I say? 5,000 years.
Yes. Well, anyway, this week we're going to examine some of the world's most favorite or most commonly used cliches or phrases and try to examine them and understand if they hold up, are they really true? And today we'll start with, maybe it's called a church favorite, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that's why we'll look at a book about debt. So this book opens with a very strong statement that our conventional origin story about money is completely wrong. And so the author asks, what is debt? And he just gives us a very simple definition. It's a sum of money owed. It is the state of owing money, or it is the feeling of gratitude for a favor or service. But then he asks this question, is it necessary for you to actually pay your debts? Are you ought, to pay your debts? And then he identifies this fundamental problem that a lot of us have. This assumption that debts have to be repaid. And I really like how he, gets straight into that.
I like that.
Exactly.
Do you owe somebody something?
Do you owe anybody anything for real? And so this book is a very deep and scholarly history of how debt and money came to be what it is today, and how human relations have evolved around it. And so Graeber is an anthropologist, and he provides very convincing evidence that the story about money is completely wrong. Money was created as a way to actually track something else, debt itself. And so this is the version of money that we're usually taught, that before money, commerce happened through bartering. So for example, if I had extra wood and 2M had extra grain, we would negotiate and swap it for mutual benefit because we'd both be better off. And so this popular narrative, bartering and trading fundamentally make us human. So for example, Adam Smith, he tells us in The Wealth of Nations, a man is an animal that makes bargains, but no other animal does that. no dog exchanges bones with another. And I believe that to be true. So bartering only works if there is what he calls a coincidence of wants.
Yes.
That we both want what the other has, but at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then we ended up creating money to solve this problem of the coincidence of wants. Because instead of us having to rely on coincidence or stockpiling something that everybody would want at a particular time, we would instead use tokens or coins as a medium of exchange.
Yeah.
But then what he then discovers is that not all debt is created equal. And throughout history, certain sorts of debt or certain sorts of debtors have been treated differently than others.
Yeah.
And so he gives a story from the 1720s in the UK. And he says one thing that scandalized the British public so much was when the press exposed the conditions of what there was called debtors' prisons. And what was most surprising was that these prisons were divided into two sections.
Yeah.
On one hand, you had the aristocratic inmates who often thought that a brief stay in prison was something of a fashion statement.
Yes.
Oh.
And so they were wined and dined by servants, and they were allowed to receive regular visits from prostitutes.
Hey.
On the other side, you had what was called the common side, where impoverished debtors were shackled together in tiny cells and covered with filth and vermin. And as one report put it, they were left to suffer and die without pity or hunger in a jail cell.
Yeah.
So you can almost kind of see that the current economic, arrangements that we have are a larger version of the same thing. The US is one of the biggest debtors in the world.
Absolutely.
And then you compare it to another country like Haiti, which was put into debt by the French French government.
colony. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you compare the US is the aristocratic debtor,
Absolutely.
and Haiti is the impoverished debtor in a cell.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the US is lecturing Haiti about how
It's a debt uptick.
exactly this was due to their own irresponsibility.
Absolutely.
So maybe I think exploring what debt really means
Yeah.
is what Africans should do.
Yeah.
Do we have to assume that all debts need to be repaid?
That's a fantastic question. And maybe that's the premise. That's how we should advance from now on when we're dealing with the Chinese. Anyway, economics 101 would have it that money is a medium of exchange. That's what we learned all in economics class. That money is legal tender and an acceptable form. It's an acceptable form of attaching value to goods and services.
Yes.
But there's an interesting theory that I'm buying, and it's called the state and credit theories of money. Now, credit theories insist that money is not a commodity, but an accounting tool. In other words, it's not a thing at all. It's nothing that you can touch.
Yes.
All right? And they say that for a credit theorist, can no more touch a dollar or a Deutschmark than you can touch an hour or a cubic centimeter. Beautiful.
Yes,
right?
very good.
And there's a reason for this. And they say the obvious question is, if money was just a yardstick, what then would it measure? And you know what the answer is?
Yeah.
Debt.
Yep.
Right? And it says a coin is effective an IOU.
Yes.
Right? Whereas conventional wisdom holds that a banknote is or should be a promise to pay a certain amount of real money. It's like a promissory note.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, credit theorists argue that a banknote is simply a promise to pay something of the same value as an ounce of gold. And that's all money is. See, and I like that because in a way he's saying that money is it's a form of social contract.
Yes.
All right, that it's legal fiat, some form of arbitrary decree that allows participants in a market to engage. All right, because you and I did not meet to realize the value of unga, for example.
Yeah.
However, market forces came together and said, praxeology,
Human interaction.
the millions of human interactions that dictate the powers of supply and demand. All right, that value derived of a good that you can say 1,000 shillings, and the phone is worth 1,000 shillings, and if you give me that one note and then I give you the phone, nobody came together to decide that.
Yeah.
But that social contract that it is accepted
free market
innately that if I give you this, then I will get this in return.
So we're going around
With
with social contracts in our pockets.
Yes, we're going with social contract
And debt.
slash debt / promissory notes.
Yeah. In fact, when he's talking about the origins of money in some of the chapters,
Yeah.
and he's saying that one of the earlier ones, of course, that was actual coin,
Yeah.
was in the Roman Empire or in Roman times.
Yeah.
And he said that the value of the coin itself superseded or was so much more than what the metal that it was made out of. If it was gold or silver or whatever metal it was made out of, the value that was on it far exceeded it.
Yes.
And it's because it's an agreement. And that is why coins have heads and tails.
Yes.
The head has the portrait of whoever it is that is giving the authority. For example, the ruler, then Tiberius.
Yes.
And then in the back is the value, which is what it is we have agreed upon.
Absolutely.
This piece of metal, which may be worth far less than what it is saying, is actually worth this out of agreement.
Yes.
Love it.
So I found this book extremely interesting. In fact, I think it's one of the most interesting books we've ever read here. And I don't think we have enough time to really go into it.
To cover 5,000 years.
Absolutely, to cover 5,000 years. But I did particularly enjoy when he was talking about the roots of debt. And he says that debt is part of the human condition, and it can be explained economically, anthropologically, even religiously, which was very interesting and an aha moment for me. So he draws a lot of this kind of arguments from Friedrich Nietzsche in his book on the genealogy of morals, which he wrote in 1887. And he says that the oldest and most primitive relationship between humans outside of the familial context is that of buyer and seller, but also that of creditor and debtor. And in fact, debt in particular is what made, for the first time, a person move up against another person. See, when a debt relationship is created, a new dynamic is created. I am then indebted to you and I owe it to you. So there's a hierarchy that is created. And with that hierarchy of debt came guilt. It came with guilt. And this guilt permeated all aspects of a lot of human systems that Nietzsche actually thinks that this is what contributed, or this was the beginning of crystallizing human morality. And this is why up to this day, there's this strong relationship or the way we view creditors, or let's call them debt collectors.
Debt collectors.
Debt collectors. Shylock, since back in the day, this guilt that was so strong, it drove them to being the custodians of a sort of morality that they had the power to mete out punishment that was unusual. So for instance, he gives us, and I don't know how true these historical tidbits are, that you would find in a ledger book somewhere that a debt has been cancelled out because a finger of the debtor was cut off. So debtors, and I think one of the chapters is even called cruelty and redemption. So this cruelty was allowed because me, as the person who has your money, I allow it because I'm so guilty. In fact, he says that in a lot of languages, the word for debt and guilt are the same, like in Germany. So I suppose that reputation of cruel debt collectors stays true up to today. But there are some parallels, he tells us, with the theory of primordial debt. Primordial debt is the idea that each of us, each human being, is born indebted to their parents, to their ancestors, to their nation, to everybody. So you just come into the world with debt. But then also in primordial theory, or rather primordial theory itself, seeped into all religions of the world. And if you think about it, one of the most prominent religions is Christianity. And one of the fundamentals of Christianity is that the earth, or humankind, was so indebted and unable to pay this debt of sin to God that he had to give himself as redemption.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
And so, does it hold up robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
I would say this book has told me that that's fine.
It is
right?
fine.
Because Peter probably borrowed from Mark, to pay somebody else, so it's okay.
Absolutely, the cycle continues.
Exactly.
And I think also that saying robbing Peter to pay Paul is supposed to be a demonstration of how debt is futile, but that is not true. A lot of people, or most of the wealthy of the world, do not get there without wealth. And in fact, they're probably still indebted. And as 2J you mentioned, the wealthiest countries in the world are also the deepest in debt.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on your TV screens on Star Times,
Yeah.
Go TV, and Pang Free to Air. I want to leave you with this quote. If you owe the bank 100,000 shillings, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank 100 million shillings, you own the bank.
Beautiful.
Have a good night. See you tomorrow.